Welcome back. I'm Bart Loser, Continuing Education Program Coordinator for Toastmasters District 55. In this third part of our effective evaluation series, we're going to focus on the evaluation process. Now, in the evaluation process, it's a little different from how the first session we focused on receiving feedback, and then the second section we focused on delivery pointers, and here it's the Toastmasters specific evaluation process that we use with the new Pathways Education program. So in the evaluation process, you want to make sure that before you ever have to evaluate a speech, check with the speaker beforehand, review what their goals are. They may have some very specific things that they're going for when they're practicing this speech. You also might want to get a copy of the evaluation form that you're going to use beforehand so you can be familiar with the form that you can use in taking your notes. It's the ideal way to take notes is on this form, and you're going to want to make sure to send this form back to them in an electronic version, so you can either scan it and send it to them, or take an electronic version and type in there what your evaluation was, and then send that to them so that they can store that in their Basecamp on their Toastmasters website, and that actually is stored in what is called the e-portfolio. That way they can keep copies of their speech there, as well as keep copies of their evaluation. Secondly, during the speech, you want to take lots of notes. Give lots of examples of what they do on their content, how they use words, how it flowed, what their delivery style was in terms of their vocals, their body language, and how they used the space. And then lastly, what impact did this have for you? Take notes on how did it make you think, feel, or do? Did it have the impact that they were going for? Then the next part of the evaluation process, you want to organize the evaluation into a speech. Now, this is an extemporaneous speech where you don't get a lot of practice for the speech, but you will have a little bit of time to organize it. So take those notes that you've written down and focus on a format that you want to use. One format I might recommend is the GIFT format that we taught in the second stage of the evaluation process that I taught in pointers, the GIFT method, G-I-F-T. You can use other methods that are out there, and you can see and find things on the internet. People use different ways in which they organize their evaluation, but always find a way to organize it where you can let people know, here's how my evaluation is going to go. And of course, an important part of this is give great recommendations that are specific for how they can improve. And then lastly, you're going to deliver your evaluation. It's a 2 to 3 minute evaluation speech. Always begin and close with some positive notes. Say things very positive. Then next, you want to use all your delivery tools. This is a speech after all. So you want to use your vocal variety, your body language, your gestures, move around a little bit. Now, if you're doing this online, be aware of the space that you're working with online and don't go outside of that space, just like you don't want to go outside of your speaker space when you're giving the speech in live as well. Another thing to keep in mind is that you want to use very specific examples to illustrate your points. So if I say, I noticed that when you were speaking that you sometimes ended your sentences where you went in a way where I heard the volume go down. So you'd be speaking and then you'd be in your sentence, you'd get quiet. And it made it hard to hear the last part of what you were saying. So you might want to make sure to keep your volume clear all the way through the end of your sentence. Sometimes it might be that someone is ending their sentences going up in pitch. And so it can sound very questioning, such as, well, here's how I might deliver your evaluation versus here's how I might deliver your evaluation. Notice how I go down in the way I'm using my voice, down in terms of the way I'm. Make sure that you deliver your evaluation as well. It's the most important part of your. And number 4, deliver your evaluations. Now keep in mind, it is a speech. You want to begin and next you want to deliver your evaluation. Keep in mind that this is a speech, so always begin and close your speech with positivity and use all your delivery tools. This is using your vocal variety, using your body language, your gestures, using the space around you to make the most of that speech. Use very specific examples to illustrate your points so that they know specifically what you mean. So if I say perhaps that when you were speaking, I noticed that as you got to the end of your sentences, you would sort of get very quiet. And so you might say something such as, instead of getting quiet at the end of your speeches, you might want to make sure that your volume is the same throughout. So focus on maintaining your volume. Another thing is, keep in mind, if you're going to give specific areas for improvement, narrow those areas down to 1 or 2 major points. Don't present 5 or 8 points that they could improve upon. Now, you can do that in the written evaluation part, but not in your spoken evaluation presentation. The written evaluations that we use in Toastmasters are very specific. Here's an example of the third speech project you will do. This comes after your icebreaker, and then your second speech, which will be an evaluation and feedback speech where you get feedback from somebody. Then you will either give that speech again or a different speech, but using the evaluation feedback that you got from the previous one, so that in this second evaluation speech, you're incorporating that feedback. Now, on the speech evaluation itself, you'll list the member's name, the date, the evaluator's name, and you'll see here it already lists the length of this particular speech and lists the title of the speech. And keep in mind, you'll want to send this to your speaker so that they can put this into their electronic or e-portfolio online. And you want to look at and read through before you ever have to listen to the speech itself. What's the purpose of this particular speech? What will you be looking for, listening for? And so you can both talk to the speaker as well as find this information out from this, but get this information well before you have to actually evaluate this speech. This is the top half of the form, and just below the notes for the evaluator about what the speech is for, then it'll ask for 3 specific areas that we always look for in evaluating a Pathways speech. What was it that they excelled in? So you'll make a few points on what they did that was great. Then you'll also want to focus on what's 1 or 2 areas that they might want to work on. A third area is something they might do to challenge themselves. So next time when you speak, you might think to do this, such as speak without using notes, or use only a few note cards perhaps, and not use the actual speech fully written out as notes while you're up there. So do something that might challenge them for the next speech. The second page of an evaluation in Pathways is perhaps the most important. It lists all the different factors you're going to be looking for to evaluate, such as their clarity. How well did they speak their language? Was it clear and easily understood to you? If not, you might give some comments on the side. But they use what is called a Likert scale of points, 5 to 1. 5 being the best that they could possibly do, an exemplary way of presenting, versus number 3, somewhere in the middle, they were accomplished, but it could be better. And number 1, clearly they're a developing speaker and they need to develop these skills a little more. But if it's anything less than a 4, always make sure you've got something written into the comment section that can tell them how they can take it up from wherever you scored them at. Vocal variety is another thing you're going to be looking for. How well they used tone, how the speed of which they spoke, the pacing, as well as the volume. You look for eye contact, how effectively they use that eye contact. Are they looking you in the eye? And I would recommend that they should give eye contact to each person in their audience when they're live, to probably at least 2 seconds to pause on one person with eye contact before they move on to the next person. So it's smooth eye contact and engaging. You might want to think about the gestures that they use, whether it's counting or whether it's forceful gestures or anything to create a movement. Now, the gestures in the face are just as important to look for. So what are some of the physical gestures they were doing that worked or didn't work? How aware were they of the audience? Were they focused on their audience's needs? And did they look and sound comfortable to you as evaluators? And if not, what could they do to change that? Another thing is, did they create interest in you? Did they keep the speech interesting throughout? Was it well constructed? And lastly, it's usually the last piece is about specifically this project and how well they applied the project goals. In this particular speech, it's how well they applied the feedback from their previous speech. And if they didn't do it quite to what you thought was the best, what could they do to improve that? So with this speech, it's very helpful to find out what was the feedback from the previous speech so you can know whether or not they've applied that. But as an evaluator, you want to be able to give this gift to people of your opinion on how effective their speech is. So you both want to learn as a speaker to receive feedback gracefully, which we addressed in our very first evaluation piece. So in summary, the evaluation portion of effective evaluation, we focused in the first portion on receiving feedback gracefully. And in the second portion, we illustrated some pointers that you want to practice in delivering your speech, such as motivating people with the gift model, showing that what they did that was great, how they could improve, what was your favorite, and what was the takeaway. And then in this last piece, we focused on the evaluation process as we use in Toastmasters, specifically the Pathways evaluation forums and how to use them well so that you deliver a great evaluation to that speaker so they can improve in this process. I'm Bart Loser with the Continuing Education Program for Toastmasters District 55.